These are 5 riding gloves that are supposed to keep your hands dry. Today we try to prove it. For our affluent adventurers, we have the $440 Dominators from Revit. If you want to ride around the world and be prepared for anything, take these. Just also be prepared to get robbed at the border. At nearly half the price, you can still show off with the $230 Vanguard GTX from Climb. They're ugly and UGG-like, with a fuzzy-wuzzy liner that lets other riders know you mean business because you invested in Climb, but you're in the business of secretly snuggling. For those of us who need our waterproof gloves to fit like a glove, we have the S-Max Dry Stars from Alpine Stars. They use lower volume and a stretchier material, so you get that second skin feel rather than feeling like your hand is wearing a parka. This one's a parka, the Icon PDX3 CE, bro. D3O, tight. Kind of feels like a pair of Jenko jeans with knee pads, but they're 70 bucks, so if you're stingy and steezy, here you go. But at this point, couldn't we just go to the hardware store? Part of me thinks a glove's a glove. I need them for changing tires on the van, stacking logs, and a million other things other than riding in the rain. If it's good enough for a demolition crew and it says Milwaukee, it should be fine for my commute, right? Let's test it. My main gripe about waterproof gloves is the layers of material sliding over each other when I go to grip the bar. A lot of gloves in this category have less stitching in the palms to reduce the amount of holes poked in the water barrier. So too many of them sacrifice grip to stay dry. To test this, we're gonna use the highest knuckle as an indicator and then grab the grip in front of a protractor and twist it until we run out of slack. 5 degrees, nothing. It's as good as it gets and it better be. The thing about super expensive gloves is you can pay someone to run 50 seams throughout the whole thing. Everything's double stitched and anchored everywhere. There's almost instant engagement. You get what you pay for, but this is the least we could ask for. 45 degrees, a full quarter turn of slack. So for my hands, the climbs are just too sloppy for aggressive riding, but I can't deny they are super cozy. 10 degrees, nice. That Ninja Fit's got the S-Max Dry Stars holding on to me about as tight as I'm holding on to the bar. Revit's still got them beat, but barely. These are great. 60 degrees. They look cool though, right? You can't tell that I have no grip on my handlebars, right? I hate them. 80 degrees. Strike one for the multitasking tradesman's solution. Can't imagine this would suck any less swinging a hammer either, which is sketchy. I don't think these gloves deserve the same logo as my Sawzall. Our next test is heat retention. So I think what we'll do is put rubber gloves into each one of these things, fill them up with 100-degree water, which is roughly the body's temperature if you've got COVID. We'll tie them shut with a rubber band, and then we'll use a meet thermometer to monitor the temperature.
A meet thermometer to monitor the temperature. A meet thermometer to monitor the temperature. A meet thermometer to monitor the temperature. A meet thermometer to monitor the temperature.
Climb takes the W. The fuzz isn't just for fun. It's increasing surface area, it's trapping air and heat. Glad to see some functionality out of these lazy boys. These pricey prima donnas do not win for warmth. $440 gets you ventilation and insulation, but since you can't close the vents, those benefits just cancel each other out. Plus, they tie with the shit from Home Depot. So far, keeping you warm is the only thing the Milwaukee demo gloves are good for, but they do just as well as the Revit, so it adds some perspective for this category. And the Dry Stars do not hold much heat, which is the trade-off for how low profile and tactile they are. Then the Icons are just as chilly without any of the benefits. But I guess if your hand is fat enough to fill these things out, they're well insulated enough anyway. This glove is being filled with air at a steady flow of 0.5 psi per second. The more bubbles we see, the wetter our hand is going to be. Where air gets out, water gets in. We actually dropped this video last week, and at this point, a few Gore-Tex fans blew a gasket. False start, boys. I'm taking it down. I'm taking it down right now. So we figured we'd have to destroy these things in the name of science to figure out what's really going on. See, the Revit soaked through fast in field testing. So we set up the back to tank to get a visual on where the leaks were coming from. It looked like the leaks came through the stitching, but we couldn't prove it wasn't just breathing through the Gore-Tex membrane. Baby goats died for this, but there's only one way to figure out what's going on. It turns out for the Dominators, there are no stitches through the water barrier at all. There's a thin membrane that feels similar to Tyvek. It's glued to the inner liner and outer shell, which is what gives it the best grip by far. It looks like two hand-shaped panels heat sealed together at the perimeter. The tensile strength is great, but the seams peel apart easily. This membrane doesn't allow air to permeate fast enough to produce the airflow we saw, and the material extends all the way to the base of the cuff, so we know it wasn't air taking the long way around. We conclude that there must be a hole somewhere in the seams of the membrane, which is why we got wet during field testing. But that didn't yield any results we could quantify on camera, so now that we're destroying gloves anyway, let's dive into a reworked waterproof test. At around 40 pumps, I feel a small leak in the pinky of the dry stars, but it doesn't get any worse for our standardized total of 69. Though we do get some absorption at the wrist near the opening. And at the reveal, we can barely see the dye at all on the pinky, so it was a slower leak, but a leak nonetheless. Halfway through the Icon's bloodbath, I'm starting to feel the water slip in through the stretch panel near the wrist. These gloves are short, so that leaky panel is below the waterline, and I also spring a small leak in the thumb. The climbs are holding pretty well. I can feel them taking on a lot of water, but nothing's touching my skin until 32 pumps when I feel the red tide flowing through the cotton onto the side of my hand. The Milwaukees start leaking at the middle and index fingertips and a bit on the outside of the palm toward the last few pumps. Good bang for your buck. I'm feeling water ingress at 7 pumps. It's coming in at the base of the fingers, and we know that's where the seams were in the liner, so the membrane must be compromised. By the magic number, my hand is soaked. So we have to have a breach, but this time there's no room for speculation. We initially thought our Dominators must be defective, but both gloves leaked during field testing. Then as I put on the next glove for the dunk tank, it hit me. The Dominators weren't defective out of the box. The liner is weak at the seams. Now these are XLs like the rest of the gloves in this test, but these are the shortest fingers, so I wind up habitually packing them down before each ride and stressing that liner at the weak points. Should I have to worry about that with $440 gloves? No. So if you're gonna go for it, just make sure you size up. For me, gloves are consumables. The tougher they are, the harder I am on them, and they always get chewed up eventually. And that's why at $440, I personally can't justify the Dominators. Even if they were truly waterproof, I'd still rather put that money into gas and pick up a couple pairs of something cheaper. They are the warmest, they're so cozy, they're just too bulky on the controls. It feels more like a ski glove. Not for me. They'll keep you drier than a pair of summer gloves, in theory, and they won't cost you an arm and a leg, just functionality. Icon's more about style, it seems, but it's tough to look cool when you're shivering and can't get a grip. I might snag a pair of the Milwaukees for the bottom of my tail bag in case I get caught in cold weather with my summer gloves on, but they're not roadworthy in general, so no hardware store hacks today. The dry stars fit me the best and the price is right. I sweat and I run hot, so I'm gonna have damp stars at best anyway, but they give me just enough protection for riding through cold and wet weather without sacrificing any of the dexterity I need for off-roading or ripping through traffic. So Ryan can put these in my tab. Thanks. This glove is being filled with a steady flow of air at point fiat air at point fiat. Fuck! This glove is being filled with air at 0.5